or also trying to see if I can do some 2-year degree or something like that related to nutrition, but also in some way to education. I'm trying to link them both. Or also, I found that I really like teaching other people or helping other people. So if I cannot do that, maybe just linked the education part and do something with it.
And I know you've traveled extensively around the world.
Yes.
I want to know, and I want you to share with them, how accessible, because that's part of our theme here for this conference, how accessible was the adult education program for you? Was it difficult to find one and then to go through the process to get into the program and then rank it for you?
Okay, well, yeah, I've traveled around the world, and here it at first it was really difficult because it's not really like, hey, do you want to learn this? Come here. It was more like asking the right person. I end up asking. It was like human services or something like that from the Hanover County, and they directed me to the Georgetown School. And the process was really simple. I just needed my ID and a small fee, and I was in. And as I told you, I was only there for the ESL program, and I ended up also having my GED and now having my diploma and now the CLA. So I got a lot from it, and I'm really thankful.
Any other questions?
Have you done anything else with medications or in the medical field with your nutrition?
Here, no, because apparently I need to somehow revalidate my degree here. And I'm still looking for that because I know that my university in Mexico has some kind of association with here in United States with the, before it was known as the ADA, but now I think they changed the name because now this is the Dentist Association, so I have to find. So for starters, I need to find what's the association now here for the Dietitian Association. But yeah, I know I have to take some kind of test to just revalidate my degree.
Any other questions?
I just have a comment to make. I am the program manager in adult literacy, and our main group of people that we serve are language learners. They're, and I would say almost exclusive, no, I would say 89% of them are Spanish speakers. Some of them come having never been to school. Some of them, I'll say the majority are around 5th or 6th grade education. Then we have people who are educated, and the process just is very unclear. They have this education, and how do they move through our system to get the, to be quantified, to be able to do their profession. And it's just not a clear process to me. And I'm trying to work more with the community college, but then they just cut my hours back, so I don't know how that's going to come about. But but you said you got your GED after you got your degree in your country.
Yeah.
And so was that required of you to start at that point?
As I said, I haven't looked it up really well, like what do I need, but I thought it was like a good start, like to show that at least I have like a high school equivalency here. And my next step is just looking up how can I revalidate my degree.
And we have one learner who came to me and said, I signed up for this class, but I'm not going to be here because I'm going back to Peru because I can't get anything done online. I can't get my transcripts from college. I have to go there
Yeah, and I heard like if you try to come here with your degree, like physical degree, you are not allowed to come inside the United States because you are with your degree, traveling with your degree, meaning that you are planning to stay here, so they don't let you come with your degree.
Wow.
There was a woman that I had as a customer in Johnson City, Tennessee. Her husband was a radiologist, but she could not pass her English version of the medical degrees, and so she owned a restaurant in Johnson City, a Mid-Eastern restaurant, and that's typical in the United States. We put foreigners, I guess you could say, they have to prove that theirs is as good as ours. And we've had people from Germany. My wife knew a man that he had actually written the medical book that they eventually tested him.
Oh, I love that.
From Germany, but that was after World War II. It gives you an idea of my age. And by the way, I've been to your country numerous times, and I've driven to Mexico City once. I've been there a couple of times. You know Popo, the mountain outside of Mexico City?
Popocatépetl?
I've climbed it once before it blew up the next time. But that's quite an experience too. Everybody should, that's like 18,000 feet. So you're above the airplanes that are taking off from Mexico Airport. But it's a big volcano. And and by the way, her country is truly the Magic Kingdom because I've been to a lot all over the country looking at their various antiquities, and it is amazing
Yeah.
the level of civilization that's down there that we sort of ignore. But it is a great place. And Mexico City's a fascinating place. You could drive for
Right.
miles and never seem to leave it.
I'm going to ask a question to this group. So how many years have any of your students in the past who graduated or moved on come back and visit you? Okay, see your hands. What are they saying to you?
I'm in the prison.
Yeah, I know you're in the prison from the other workshop. But yeah, they get back. So what are they saying to you without saying it?
Thank you.
It's part of their.
Thank you. What else?
Most of the time, I've had students, when I was in the classroom, they would come back and share with the other students how valuable the experience and the educational process is to go
Right.
through here. Someone asked a question about the GED. I had a student once who had a couple of degrees from this country. He came into the ELA, or ESOL, back then we called it, program, and I transitioned him over into the ABE side, and then he actually was able to go to ODU and work on his doctorate.
Right.
So the GED, having gotten the GED was like an open gateway for him. The transcripts, when you talk about transcribing their transcripts, there's a place in New York, and I don't have it right now, I've been out of the loop a little bit, but there is a company, an organization that does that. And what typically happens is the credits that are required for the various professions here, there may not be as many credits. A doctor from one of the islands, for example, or some other part of the world, may not have enough of the credits that are required to be a doctor here in
Yeah.
this country. So then it requires more education, that you have to go and take additional classes. So that's one of the things that I know is very commonplace. Why you might have, I had a person who was a surgeon in one country, came here, and he was driving a pizza truck, but we were able to help him to get connected to VCU MCD Hospital, where he was able to do some research there to assist the doctor. So various
Okay.
ways you have of working with the students to get them kind of connected to what it was that they did
Yes, ma'am.
previously in their countries, so that they can at least have a door open, now we say the pathway,
Right.
to whatever it is they're trying to do here in this country.
Right, so that's one part of it. So majority of you had your hand up. So what most students are saying when they come back and say hi, what they're saying is they feel part of you. They learn something. There's a family, there's a community here. And that's where I feel is missing. We haven't developed a mechanism, most programs, to invite them students back to be part of our program. We get people up to a certain level and we send them on to the other programs. But we don't have a pool, a mechanism to keep them associated with our programs. in some way, like volunteering, helping with the graduation, or inviting them in to become a staff, inviting them in to help with an annual fundraiser. We don't, as a whole, as a field, do not utilize this resource. If people are coming back to say hi, that means they feel part of you. And so that's the group that you need to tap into if you're developing student involvement, because they're not in the I student where I'm still struggling. They're the ones who came through your program that would speak to legislators, that would be able to connect you into other communities. So there's a vast resources sitting on the table here that this field is most programs miss out on it. Because when someone comes back and say, hey, how you doing? They're saying, I miss you. How can I be part of you? And so think about how do you tap that resources to help improve the work that you're doing now. Is there a former student that would be perfect as your receptionist? Is there a former student that would be perfect as your staff? You know, we're massing up. And then one of the part of the trainings that we do, a lot of programs don't even realize how much resources your students in your program right now have. We test the students about what they can't do. We test about what skills they need. We did that, but we ever sit down and talk about when we do projects or whatever, what skills are you good at? Make a list. What resources do you have? What do you mean resources? When we do that in part of our leadership training, the directors are blown away most of the time. Because I was doing one and I said, my brother's the mayor of the town. The program didn't even know it. So in your own program, I guarantee you, you have vast resources to help improve your program, but no one ever asks the students about any of the resources they're able to tap into. Can they bring, you need more students. What community are they associated? What churches are they, we don't invite our students in. And so I'm putting that out there so the ones that come back to you say hi, think of them as a vast resource for your program. But we don't ask.
In DOC, we do have inmates that come back and work for us
Okay.
in the probation parole area and the reentry area because we need their expertise to help motivate to get these guys out the door and what things they're going to encounter. What people don't understand about inmates is that they never stop serving their sentence. They may have completed their sentence, but the way the law reads and the way things are angled against them, it's really geared toward getting them back in, not keeping them out.
So by having peers talking with them, it changes the dynamics.
Yeah, but I had two that had life sentences, and it worked for me. Both of them worked for me about 7 years, and the one got married while he was in prison, and his wife was instrumental in getting him out of prison, and he now is living in Virginia Beach. He took a motorcycle class, although he is extremely good in software and coding. And he took our motorcycle repair class and now is working at a small engine repair place, which is well beneath what his capabilities are. And then but he's just happy to have a job. And the other one ended back up in Louisiana, and he's taking care of his elderly father and his elderly stepmother, he was actually closer with, and she was instrumental in getting him out of prison. And they both served 30 years, and they were in their 50s at this point. So I mean, but they both called me, both told me where they were at, how things were going, and I said, just keep it going, that type of thing. But I had strongly motivated these people all along. What I want to hear about you is that you're paying taxes, staying out of trouble, and working with your family. And
Okay.
each one of them has done that.
And you have a question?
I went to a session yesterday, and it was, I believe it was Literacy for Life, Northern Virginia. But anyway, they have an alumni association, which was an excellent point that I plan to take back to my region, because having an alumni association do at certain points throughout the year to keep them connected. They can advocate for your program, help you get new people in, maybe help with persistence and retention,
Right.
which is a big problem in adult ed, because they can come back and share with the students that are participating. To stick to it, don't give up. You know, we had these certain types of inclinations and thoughts about the class too, but we endured, you know, this type of thing,
Right.
encouragement.
The trick to that is, over the years of experience, it's not a position. What we learned is, because we did student support groups, there's been other little alumni, and it goes up like this, there's energy, and then it dies. Then you wrap up your energy, and it's something good, and then it dies. And so we learned to get off of that roller coaster. It's not about a person or a position. What you should do is basically base it around projects. Because this way you have to have a beginning and it have to end. And you try to keep things within 3 months or a semester or within a year, because no one can give forever. So if you're basing your student involvement with a beginning and end point, you can then bring new people in. People could step out nicely. If you keep a project going forever, then people then drop out the ball, the energy. By doing project-based things, or like they're going to do the graduation, you can gear up for that. And then next year, new group, but they can learn from it and leave a couple around and move on, and some people can leave. So if you're going to do student involvement, or you're going to get your students more activated, think about project-based to help your program. Nothing for over a year, but a timeline. Yes. And then,
I want to ask us to think about not only having students who have completed and left us coming back to tell us what they can, but students who are in our program. So what can students in our programs now tell us about what we should be doing for them, right? So I spent a year on a student support group project, and I learned a lot because people told me what the program should be doing for them. And Elaine, you talked about being part of a support group, and Jessica, you too. So can you tell us a little bit about what we should be doing to listen to our students, the students we have right now?
okay. You two go first.
Where to begin? It's like such a big topic and kind of narrowing it all down. A question, I guess, first. Has anybody had student involvement where your nice students turn into angry students? Have you run across that before? I hear at least one person laughing. One of the things with getting students involved, at first there's we know our place. We are here, teachers are up there. You do what the teacher says, you remember that as a kid. One way of looking at it is, I've noticed if you break things down into the I, we, and us stage, a lot of adult learners, especially those born in this country who have had trouble in school, are pretty much alone throughout their lives. They meet other adult learners. They need that opportunity because learning isn't just academic. It's also very emotional with every past failure you've ever had. So there's ways that programs can also address that as well and have the students talking together where they do say, I'm angry and I'm hurt and I feel betrayed and it was like being, emotionally raped and, getting that anger out. But then you wind up with students who are angry and why aren't you doing this and why aren't you doing that? It's not personal. It's not a bad thing. The dam is opening up. If you realize that it isn't personal, they don't know you're working 60 hours a week and only getting paid for 20 with no money, or how your organization is even, running. But if you can get them from the I, so they're starting off with the I. As students, they become we. We are students. We are powerful. We want to be heard. And they become a real pain in the neck. But if you can get them from the we into us, and part of getting them into the us is taking just a little bit of time, not a whole lot of time. I was very fortunate where I had a lot of very good role models in the beginning. Like with the support group, like Marty says, you go for so long, then you run out of sort of stuff, so the projects are the way to go. But one of the things that we found is you get a bunch of adult learners, they're going to come up with the best ideas, and if you had unlimited amount of money, time, staff, and resources, it would be absolutely fantastic. But they don't know what your budget is or who you have to answer to. So in my local program, the director actually came and said, okay, you have questions, let's sit down and talk. Well, that turned out to be like an every other week Wednesday night meeting where she would explain questions to us, or she would answer questions how the program worked, and she would ask us questions what we thought. And all of a sudden, I mean, as adult learners, that hierarchy, lowerarchy, all of a sudden, I became an adult on an equal level. I mean, you want to talk about empowering your student, you can talk until you're blue in the face. It's not what you say, it's what you actually do. And by creating that partnership, like others were saying, then you find out who of these adult learners actually have resources, who would be more than willing to share those resources or their connections. I've heard some people say that not everybody can be a leader. Well, that's true. Not everybody wants to. Like myself, I decided I wanted to go further and make a career out of it. So student involvement can be, we heard you made an incredible cherry cobbler. We're having a gathering. Would you consider making that and bringing it in? Part of it is also teaching, the adult learners the different skills, not telling them what you have to do, but taking the time and saying, okay, we're going to be doing this. What do you think you need? Whether it's electronic or the old-fashioned flip chart paper, write out their ideas and thoughts, drag it out of them. And with the group around, me by myself trying to give the right answer, I might be wrong, I won't say anything. But if she says something and then she says something, it's like, that might spark something in me. From that list, okay, let's, prioritize what is more important. Again, you're teaching all these different additional skills, an agenda, keeping an agenda realistic, or if you have too much, you think this will go quick, and it's like, oh, they're really getting into these other skills. This is going to take longer. Teachers are not perfect. You don't have to say, see, even I make mistakes. Oh, do I hate that? It's more of, okay, I was very ambitious. We got this far. All right, next time we meet, let's, start covering some of this. We can, an agenda can always be rearranged. Again, you're teaching by modeling at the same time. So you do get a lot, the program benefits, and for me, I think the main thing with your adult learners is you're giving the adult learners, instead of fabricating real-life situation, you're giving real-life situation of how they're using their reading, writing, critical thinking, and in an environment where they're allowed to ask questions and make mistakes without being humiliated about it.
So I'm going to jump in here on Elaine. So how many to this group actually take some time in your class time to teach the structure of your program to your students? Anybody? So what we do in our leadership training is that we take the students that are in that, when we're in a local program, and we say, students, draw a chart of your program. How does this program work? Most of the time, the students only know their teacher. So if they have a problem, they don't know where to go. Then we take the middle-sized staff, the teachers and all that. I'm amazed how much they don't know about their own organization or their programs. They don't even sometimes know where their funding comes from. And then we take the director, and then we have them draw a flow chart. And it's an eye-opener for both groups. Because adult learners, they might go to you and say, well, why can't we have a class on Wednesday? And then next semester, there's no class on Wednesday. No one listens to me. So that's the students in-house, because they don't know the structure. And then they get mad, the angry adult learner, and they send off to the teacher, they send off the mission. They're labeled as the angry students only because they don't know that you have no power to change it or add a class on Wednesday, because we don't teach the infrastructure of our own program. And so it's a boom for the students to say, wow, I never knew that Miss So-and-so, I thought ran everything, has 10 bosses over her. Oh man, and now I know why this issue about state money is so important, because all this, if the state cuts the funding, as my program is gone. And so we don't do that. And it's eye-opening for the director how much their students don't know about their programs.
One of the things that we try to do in our program is to, at orientation, to say what we are, who we are, what we have to offer. And then we ask the students, is this what you're looking for? So they will know. That's number one. Number two, as far as the staff, knowing what the hierarchy is and what their limitations are as staff members, and how much they can promise to do and what they can actually deliver. That's done in our local PDs as well as
Right.
regional. So pretty much the staff is on board with how much or what they can do. We have some groups of students who have advocated before at one of our larger localities, and they were advocating because they wanted additional classes. We have wait lists for some of those localities, and they wanted us to create a class, but that coordinator had enough knowledge and knew what her limitations were, and she actually called in her supervisor to explain to them more. This is why we can't do this. So pretty much I think we're addressing some of those things that you're saying without actually in the classroom space telling the students or saying, this, we let them know about funding when we tell them why we have the post tests or we have these types of assessments,
Right.
because it's accountability for our funding that we
Right.
get from the federal government, from the state, what have you. So those types of things, but the
Yep.
information is, what I'm trying to say is not disseminated all at once. They get it in bits and pieces, in chunks and bites.
Right. So what I'm trying to say with that training, it's not about your program. It's really what you're teaching your adult learners, which most programs are busy teaching reading, writing, and English. They're not teaching infrastructure. And every organization has an infrastructure. So what you're doing is you're using your program to teach infrastructure. So when the student has a problem with the school system for their child, they know that there's a board. There's an infrastructure that way. If they have a place or work, they can use that same flow chart to figure out how their job works. So you go over your boss's head, what's going to happen? So what you're using your program to teach that critical thinking about infrastructure. That's what that is doing, and that's for your local program. But they're doing it in a safe environment in your program, using your program as a guide. It's not just to teach about your program. You really are teaching the critical thinking skills that will be transferable to the workplace and the rest of their lives. Because once you teach someone that, because most adults, if you're struggling with reading and writing, no one's bothering telling you, did you know what a board is? What does a board does? What does this do? And by doing it in a safe environment, you just gave them an arsenal to help them in their own lives elsewhere. So that's why it's not just about your own program.
Marty?
I'm sorry, Elaine.
Okay. Yeah, also to add to this, as I mentioned with the local program, learning how the program was set up and operated and how things worked. And then also when I started working at LVM, because I knew the structure and how things worked, quite often for funders or different reasons, we asked our adult learners if they would come and be part of a panel or to talk to a group. I can't, because I had that background knowledge, after, explaining where I came from, my personal experience, somebody would have a question. Instead of saying, oh, I don't know, here, let me give it to the manager. People were totally blown away that I actually could answer that question. In fact, the directors half the time would just step back and answer questions if I didn't know it. But basically, here she is, our adult learner. She can tell you about our program as good as I am. She understands this. And, it really made an impact on what people thought of that program, because somebody could speak very intelligent, articulate about their program, that they understood how the program worked and why they needed those funding or those resources or whatever the case may be. It's also a way of showing respect to the adult learner of maybe their education is not as high, but they're still intelligent adults, and giving them that due and that respect.
Ask Jackie. Jackie, are you able to access resources that you may need? Can you elaborate a little bit about what you were just talking about? If you have a problem, are you able to, have you learned from being at the Georgetown School, with the program that you were in? Do you know the hierarchy that you would go through to have a problem there, for example, and you wanted something? Do you know who would
Well, first they were my teachers, then it was the coordinator, Josie, and then I don't know. Yeah. Well, I know that if it was like a security problem or something, you could go to the deputy, and because we had a problem with that, but that's it.
Have experienced any of that in the classroom instructional environment.
I am going to encourage
Yeah.
you to continue to have some conversation in the break time here with these folks. You were so gracious by giving people additional time to come in, Marty, so I hate to cut you off.
No, I was getting ready to say we're out of time. We got like 30 seconds.
At stopping point, we have been videotaping a couple of the sessions just on a trial here. This was one, and this is one that I think is going to be watched because I think when you get out there and talk to folks about something they missed here, they'll want to see and want to hear and to learn what you brought today to this group. So thank you so very much. Those of you that are here, remember it's yellow
Yeah,
evaluation.
I was just gonna say
This
that.
is Session 4. You can put
And-
Marty's name on it, and be sure that you're handing that in. And we will break now. But please feel free to come.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming.